Hey guys, my name is Radek, as you all know, Econ TA for 2KO3 Economic History of Canada, and here are a few points that I thought would make really good midterm questions or exam questions. So, wheat, a staple? Well, wheat is a staple because wheat was grown and harvested here and sent away. It was treated like a staple even though it wasn't. Now, we created large backward linkages because huge capital was invested. There were rail and telegraph lines and etc. that had to be built in order to facilitate the transportation of rail. There were grain elevators, there was shipping infrastructure, and there was commercial construction involved as far as backward linkages are concerned with wheat as a staple. Now there were forward linkages as well, and this involved flour milling, baking, brewing, right? And anything along those lines was an associated forward linkage with wheat as a staple. Now, with wheat as a staple, we see final demand linkages, we see real estate, we see clothing, we see appliances. Wherever they were growing wheat, right, they needed to build a house, they needed to clothe themselves, they needed appliances, right? So even with the baking and the brewing and what have you. Now, wheat was considered the perfect staple, so if your test question says, or your exam question says, why was wheat a perfect staple? Well, it pulled Canada out of the recession. As you'll see in my other videos, I'll explain why. Farmers needed machinery. A lot of machinery was involved with the staple, so there was a lot of demand for this machinery that had to be made by other people in the economy. There were consumer goods associated with staples, as we just said, like clothing and appliances, and there were services. Right, there was a lot of services involved with wheat as a staple. It had to be processed, the machinery had to be serviced, the clothes had to be made, the houses had to be built. So there were a lot of services involved with grains and staple. Now, another good test question would be involving federal grain policy. Now, federal grain policy made sure that grain moved from east to west and not from north to south. The tariffs made sure that Canadian goods could compete with imported goods. Now, if you have any background in how the tariffs work, there could be import tariffs, so any wheat coming from outside of Canada, a tariff's imposed, so it makes the good more expensive. So this created revenue for central Canada businesses and returned tariffs to the rail. So the tariffs went to the rail companies. Now, rail moved wheat and farm supplies. So when the farms, they harvested their wheat, right, it had to be transported. So the main, I guess, mode of transportation to move wheat at the time was rail. And now when the farmers out west needed rail supplies, or rail supplies, farming supplies, it would be transported by rail. Now this brings us to our third question. Is Canada a hinterland to the west? Now there are a few good points on this. The result of all of national economy was east to west. There was lumber from BC, Ontario and Quebec provided rail supplies, implements of goods, and this increased demand for services as a result. Now, the GDP impact of the wheat boom was really unknown. A lot of people speculate that there would have been a boom regardless of the wheat. Some say that the GDP was helped by the wheat boom. It's kind of unknown. So if the question says, what was the GDP impact of the wheat boom? Just say it was unknown. And in one of my other videos, I will explain why it was unknown. So there are a few good midterm or final exam questions for you guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please be sure to watch the rest of the videos for the first midterm, second midterm, and the final. Alright guys.